Well, the programme is dominated tonight by the coroner's damning verdict in the inquest into the death of David Gray. He died after being given a massive overdose of diamorphine by German doctor Daniel Ubani, who was on his first out-of-hours shift in Britain. We can go back now to Jonathan, who's in the village of Manea in Cambridgeshire, where Mr Gray lived. So, Jonathan, big questions tonight about why Dr Ubani is still allowed to practice in Germany.
Yes, indeed, Becky, and throughout all this, the one person we've not heard from is, of course, Dr Daniel Ubani. So what do we know about him, and why is he still allowed to practice in his home country? Well, Emma Baker's been to Dr Ubani's hometown of Witten in Germany, where many people are still unaware of this case.
The German town of Witten, hundreds of miles from the Cambridgeshire village of Manea, yet the two communities have become tragically linked by one man, Dr Daniel Ubani. Daniel Ubani first moved to Germany in the early 1970s to study medicine. He soon made this country his home, settling here in the small university town of Witten. More than 25 years on, and he's now a well-known figure in the town. Seen here speaking about democracy in Africa. In 1997, he was made a German national. Daniel Ubani works as a local GP, but specialises in plastic surgery, based at his medical clinic, Queen Idia, where we paid him a visit. Well, I've just been to try and speak to Dr Ubani, but I was told by his colleague that he is not talking to any journalists and has no comment to make. Sentiments firmly echoed by others, who made it plain we were not welcome. But Dr Ubani was still treating patients, many presumably unaware of his past. While the local press has reported the story, German law prevents it from naming the doctor. Yet some in Witten are still concerned about the case. How would you feel if he was your doctor or if you were being treated by...
I would never go back to him, never.
I wouldn't go to him, you know, as a patient, definitely not.
He's still working and that's not right.
According to the local newspaper editor, the case has affected both the community and Dr Ubani himself.
Of course, the people of Witten were horrified to hear that such a tragic incident had happened in Great Britain. I also know the doctor concerned was very shocked. He was unwell and had to be given treatment. He was actually always very respected in the town.
But despite these apparent feelings of guilt, Dr Ubani failed to appear at the inquest into the death of two of his patients. Back in Cambridgeshire, Sandra Banks feels lucky to be alive. She was also treated by Dr Ubani on that day at her home in Stuntney near Ely, just hours before he administered the fatal dose of diamorphine to David Gray. A short while after he left, her condition deteriorated and she was taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, where she spent 2 days.
They said he left you, went on to Mr Gray and killed him. And I was dumbstruck. I was speechless. I think he's an absolute coward. He needs to accept responsibility for his actions, and he hasn't. He's run away from them. He ought to be brought back here somehow for him to face up to what he's done.
But that seems an unlikely prospect.
When Dr Ubani returned to his home country, he told the German authorities about what had happened. He later received a suspended prison sentence and a fine by post from a German court for causing death by negligence.
This was done unbeknown to Cambridgeshire police, who were then forced to drop their plans to charge him with manslaughter. We returned to Dr Ubani's clinic for a second day. As we began filming, we were pelted with heavy metal objects. It was clear we wouldn't be getting any answers from Daniel Ubani, yet almost 2 years on, the consequences of that fateful shift still leave many questions remaining about a British medical system that could have allowed such a string of mistakes to happen. Emma Baker, Anglia News, Witten in Germany.
Well, Emma's with me now. Emma, we heard from Stuart Gray earlier on in the programme saying that he was still hopeful of getting Ubani back in this country for trial, but there's still a lot of people angry that he's not here now.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Yeah, it's not just local people and the family that have been furious about this situation. It's also Cambridgeshire police. Now, they spent months investigating this case. They tell me they were in contact with the German authorities several points throughout that, and at no point did the German authorities indicate to them that they would be pressing charges on this case in Germany. Now, it only came to the point when Cambridgeshire police were issued with a European arrest warrant. They were as close as booking flights as they could have been, and it was only at that point they were told by the German authorities that Dr. Ubani had actually been dealt with in his hometown of Witten in Germany, and therefore they couldn't go ahead with the charges here in England. Now, we have spoken to the Crown Prosecution Service today and asked them whether this verdict of unlawful killing today changed the situation, whether it means they have evidence to press charges on any of these companies or bodies that have been involved in this case. They tell us that they actually have insufficient evidence to press charges on against anyone apart from Dr. Ubani himself, and of course at this point in time that's not going to happen.
Emma Baker, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed on all of that. Well, we asked you to get in touch with us with your thoughts as well on out-of-hours care. You've been in touch with us in absolutely by the droves, so thank you very much for some of these. We'll just get through a few of them. Nyron Bailey, who lives at Haddiscoe in South Norfolk, who said that just last Friday Nyron's son had difficulty breathing and was coughing. A call to the emergency doctors revealed no local doctors were on call. That's according to Nyron. He was told they were all closed. That's Beccles, Bungay, Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. He says that his nearest was 25 miles away. Well, Sheila from Swaffham reports of a similar experience. Her daughter phoned out-of-hours care after she was vomiting and breathing badly. Sheila says a doctor phoned and ordered her to have 2 paracetamols and to stay in bed. Her daughter wasn't happy. She phoned an ambulance. Well, Addenbrooke then did tests and found she had pneumonia and pleurisy. She goes on to say it was a good job we didn't take any notice of the out-of-hours doctor's advice. Well, today's verdict in Wisbech may have been damning, but your personal accounts have not all been one-sided, I do have to say. Here's a final one from Pippa Brown, who says her life was saved by the excellent doctor working for Take Care Now. He sent for an ambulance promptly, and within half an hour I was safely in the hands of Ipswich Hospital, she says. Had it not been for that excellent young doctor, I might not still be enjoying life now. That's from Pippa Brown, and that brings to an end our feedback for this evening. Thank you very much indeed for all your emails. Now, the person that's been covering all of this for us is Matt Hudson. Matt, what's the one thing you take out of this?
Well, I think it has to be the very first day of the inquest and seeing David Gray's partner, Linda Bubb, give her evidence very, very bravely, taking her back to that awful day, an ordinary Saturday when suddenly he was taken away from her. You know, she and his 2 sons must have thought he would be with them for, what, another 5, 10, 20 maybe years. And I think after their sorrow, there was then anger as they understood the truly bizarre circumstances that had led to his death. And since then, they've been pushing for answers. They've been pushing to changes to try and prevent this from happening again. And I guess maybe that's something they've hung on to because it was really the only thing that could give any meaning to the fact that they had lost someone that they loved in such tragic circumstances.
Indeed. Matt Hudson, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts this evening. Well, that's almost it from me, except to say let's catch up with the weather now with Rachel Mackley. And that's it for this evening's special Anglia Tonight programme from here in Manea in Cambridgeshire. On the night, the coroner's verdict found that David Gray was unlawfully killed after he received a lethal dose of painkiller from an overseas locum. Dr. Daniel Ubani was described as incompetent and not an acceptable standard. 11 recommendations were made, with the coroner calling for a complete overhaul of the out-of-hours system. The government has promised tough and robust reform. Well, we'll be back tomorrow night. Until then, from everyone on Anglia Tonight, have a very good evening. Goodbye.